Have you ever been so close to getting the perfect shot, but your camera just won't cooperate?
Like it can't quite reach the angle you need.
Exactly. Or maybe you're constantly running back and forth between your camera and whatever you're using to review your images.
Talk about a photographer's workout.
Seriously, it can be so frustrating. Well, today we're going deep on a device that's designed to solve these problems, the Camranger 2.
We've got some interesting insights on the Camranger 2 from reviews by Amateur Photographer and the Architectural Photography Almanac.
And it sounds like it's particularly valuable for certain types of photography.
Yeah, it really seems to address specific needs and challenges.
So before we dive into the specifics, for anyone who isn't familiar with the Camranger 2, could you give us a quick overview? What is it exactly?
Basically, it's a system that allows you to control your camera wirelessly.
Oh, okay.
It has two main parts. There's a hardware unit, sort of a little black box that you connect to your camera.
Hmm.
And then there's a dedicated app that you can install on your phone, your tablet, or even your computer.
So you can control your camera from your phone.
Exactly. The Camranger 2 actually creates its own Wi-Fi network.
So it doesn't rely on potentially unreliable public Wi-Fi.
Right. It sets up a dedicated secure connection specifically for controlling your camera.
And it's dual band too, right?
Yeah. You can choose between the standard 2.4 gigahertz and the faster 5 gigahertz network.
That's a nice touch. So what's the big picture here? What can you actually do with this setup?
Well, there are two main things the Camranger 2 is designed for. First, it gives you really extensive remote control over your camera's settings.
Like you can change your aperture and shutter speed and all that from your phone.
Yeah, pretty much everything. And the second big thing is wireless tethering.
Tethering.
Yeah, it means that the images you take can be automatically sent to the app so you can review them on a bigger screen.
Hmm, interesting. So who would benefit most from this kind of technology?
Amateur Photographer highlighted some specific areas where they thought it would be especially useful.
Like,
Sports photography.
yeah, I can see that.
You could position your camera in a really strategic spot and control it from a distance.
Especially for those action shots.
Exactly. And wildlife photography, of course.
So you could avoid disturbing the animals.
Precisely. They also mentioned real estate photography
Hmm, makes sense.
and event photography, where you might need to be more discreet.
Yeah, I can see that being helpful. What else?
Oh, and aerial photography or anything where you're mounting your camera on a pole or something similar.
Okay, so pretty diverse applications.
And the Architectural Photography Almanac had another specific use case that's relevant to their field: architectural photography in tight spaces.
Yeah. Those situations where it's difficult to even see your camera's screen.
Exactly. Or times when you need clients to be able to see and approve images on location.
Okay, so let's say you've got the Camranger 2 set up and you're in the app. What kind of control does it actually give you over your camera?
You have control over a really impressive range of settings.
Fill us in.
Amateur Photographer listed a ton of them in their review. You can control your shutter speed, aperture, ISO, metering mode.
Wow. So pretty much every basic camera setting.
Yeah, and drive mode, white balance, image format.
Okay, keep going.
You can even adjust your focus mode, auto exposure mode, exposure compensation, and fine-tune your focus manually.
That's a pretty comprehensive set of controls. Anything else?
Oh yeah, there are some really advanced features too. Both reviews were really impressed by these.
Such as?
Well, for example, there's touch focus.
What's that?
It lets you tap on the screen of your phone or tablet to set the focus point.
Super intuitive.
Exactly. And there's HDR, or high dynamic range, and exposure bracketing, which are great for dealing with challenging lighting situations.
I can see those being really useful.
And there's focus stacking, which lets you combine multiple images taken at slightly different focus points to create an image with a greater depth of field.
Oh, that's helpful for macro photography and stuff like that.
Right. And for time lapses, there's a built-in intervalometer.
Wow. Okay, so you've taken the photo. How do you actually see it? Does it still save to your camera's SD card like normal?
It does, but the cool thing is that with wireless tethering enabled, it also gets sent to the app on your phone or tablet almost instantly.
That's where the tethering comes in.
Exactly. You can then view the images on a much larger screen.
So you can actually see what you're shooting in more detail.
Yeah, you can zoom in up to 200%, to check your focus and all the fine details.
That's a huge advantage, especially if you're working with clients. No
Yeah.
more huddling around a tiny camera screen.
Exactly. It really simplifies the whole review and approval process. You can also rate images and share them directly from the app,
Convenient.
and you can even choose to save the images locally to your phone or tablet if you want.
Okay, cool.
Plus, the Camranger 2 itself have an SD card slot.
Oh, really? What for?
It can serve as an extra backup, which is always nice.
That's a great idea. So how about composing your shots? Can you see what your camera sees in real time?
Yeah, it has a really great live view feature.
So like a live video feed from your camera.
Exactly. Both reviews highlighted how helpful this is. And you get some handy overlays too, like an electronic level, grid lines for composition, and an RGB histogram.
So you can really nail your exposure and avoid things like blown out highlights.
Yep. And the Architectural Photography Almanac specifically mentioned focus peaking.
What's that?
It highlights the areas of your image that are in focus, which is super helpful, especially if you're focusing manually.
Ah, that sounds convenient.
On-
And what about video? Can you use the Camranger 2 for shooting video as well?
You can. Amateur photographer said it's actually very capable when it comes to video.
Awesome. So what can you do?
You can wirelessly stream the live video feed to your devices or even to a computer.
So you could have a bigger monitor on set for everyone to see.
Exactly. You have remote control over starting and stopping recording,
Okay.
and you can adjust your focus and exposure during recording. Plus, you get those same overlays that we talked about for stills, like a histogram, audio level meters, and a display of the recording time.
That's impressive.
Hmm.
Are there any optional accessories that work with the Camranger 2?
There are. Amateur photographer mentioned a motorized tripod head and a PT hub that you can get.
A PT hub.
Yeah. They let you pan and tilt your camera remotely directly from the app.
Wow. So you can do smooth panning shots or even panoramic time lapses?
Exactly. It opens up a lot of creative possibilities.
So all of this sounds really powerful, but how user-friendly is the setup process? Is it easy to get everything up and running?
Both reviews said it's actually surprisingly straightforward. Amateur photographer broke down the process into 6 steps.
6 steps. That doesn't sound too bad.
Not at all. First, you charge the Camranger 2 unit.
Makes sense.
Then, depending on your camera model, you might need to insert an SD card into the Camranger 2 itself.
Okay.
Then you download the free Camranger app onto your device.
Easy enough.
Then you connect your device to the Camranger 2's Wi-Fi network, and the password's printed right on the bottom, which is handy.
Thoughtful.
Then you connect the Camranger 2 to your camera using a USB cable.
Did it come with a cable?
It comes with several different types, and you can even use your camera's own cable if you want.
Okay.
And finally, you just launch the app and you're ready to go.
Sounds simple enough.
Mm.
And what about the app itself? With all of those controls, is it easy to navigate?
Both reviewers really praised the app's design. They said it's very intuitive and easy to find what you need, even with so many features.
That's good to hear. I hate it when apps are overly complicated.
Yeah, nobody wants to spend ages searching through menus. Amateur photographer mentioned that they were able to connect a Nikon Z7 II to an iPad in just a couple of minutes.
Wow, that's fast.
And they said the interface is clear and logical, so it's not intimidating even for someone who's never used it before.
So we've talked about the setup, the controls, the app. What about its performance in real-world shooting situations? How reliable is the connection, for example?
Both reviews reported having very stable connections throughout their testing.
That's crucial.
Yeah, the last thing you want is for the connection to drop out at a critical moment.
Right. Especially if you're shooting something important.
Amateur photographer tested the range by shooting at a cricket ground, and they were able to trigger the shutter from about 130 meters away using the 2.4 gigahertz network.
That's pretty impressive range. What about the Architectural Photography Almanac? What do they have to say?
They mainly tested within a closer range of about 6 meters.
Makes sense for their needs.
But they said the connection was consistently stable even with the antennas folded down.
Okay, good to know. What about the image transfer speeds? Are they quick enough to keep up with a fast-paced shoot?
The Architectural Photography Almanac was particularly impressed with how quickly the images transferred to their iPad. They even highlighted this in their video review.
Okay, good to hear. Now, what about battery life? Does the Camranger 2 use a lot of power?
It does use a fair amount of power. Amateur photographers said they got around 4 to 5 hours of continuous use out of a single charge.
So you definitely want to have spare batteries or a power bank, especially for a longer shoot.
Yeah, Definitely. They also pointed out that the Camranger 2's battery might drain a bit faster than your camera battery and your phone or tablet's battery,
Hmm, that's something to keep in mind.
especially if you're constantly using live view and transferring images. But you can get spare batteries, and there's an optional charger kit that lets you charge two batteries simultaneously.
Okay, good to know. The Architectural Photography Almanac also had some tips for saving battery.
Yeah. They recommended carrying extra batteries or a power bank, of course. But they also said that you can extend the battery life by turning off one of the Wi-Fi networks if you don't need both.
That's a smart tip. So let's recap. What were the main pros and cons that the reviewers highlighted?
Amateur photographer really liked the app. They said it's advanced and feature-rich.
Yeah, we covered a lot of those features.
They were also impressed with the stable connection, the broad compatibility, the ease of mounting.
And the range and dual band Wi-Fi, right?
Yep, and the SD card slot.
And what about their cons? Anything that bothered them?
They thought the included USB cables were a bit short.
That could be annoying.
And they said the case is a bit bulky.
Okay. What about the Architectural Photography Almanac? What were their overall impressions?
They listed a bunch of things they liked. They loved the stability and speed, the full camera control, the user interface.
Yeah, they seem really happy with the app.
They also appreciated that there's a separate app specifically for sharing images with clients.
Oh yeah, that's a cool feature.
And they liked that it uses a rechargeable battery and that the support from the developers was good.
Always reassuring to know they've got your back if you need help.
Definitely.
So, any downsides for them?
They didn't like that it's another piece of equipment to carry around and keep charged. They pointed out that you'll probably need at least two batteries or a power bank for a full day's shoot.
Right, which we already talked about.
They also had some issues with transferring large batches of JPEG files,
That's not ideal.
and they thought the branding could use a bit of an update.
Okay, fair enough. Beyond the specs and the pros and cons, did the reviewers share any specific ways they found the Camranger 2 to be particularly useful in their actual work?
Yeah, they did. The Architectural Photography Almanac said it was amazing for getting their compositions just right, especially in tight spaces.
Right, because they can see everything on a bigger screen.
Exactly. And they loved being able to show images to clients on a tablet and get instant feedback.
So no more back and forth emailing photos or waiting for approvals.
Precisely. It really streamlines the workflow.
Makes sense. What about amateur photographer? Any interesting anecdotes from them?
Yeah, they said the remote shutter release was invaluable for wildlife photography. They gave an example of shooting birds at a bird bath.
Where any movement could scare them off.
Exactly. They also pointed out a really cool feature for time lapses. If the connection to the app happens to drop out during a long time lapse, the Camranger 2 and the camera will keep shooting.
Oh, wow. So you don't lose the whole thing if the connection goes down.
Right. That's a really nice safety net to have.
So despite their different specializations, both reviewers seem to agree that the Camranger 2 is a worthwhile investment for photographers who need those remote control and tethering capabilities.
Absolutely. They both saw the real-world value it brought to their work. Amateur photographer even gave it their Gold Award.
High praise indeed.
Yeah.
So to sum it all up, it sounds like the Camranger 2 offers some compelling advantages for photographers looking for more flexibility and control.
Yeah. It's not just about convenience either. It's about opening up new possibilities.
Being able to get shots that you just couldn't get before.
Exactly. So for everyone listening, I'd encourage you to think about how the Camranger 2 could fit into your own photography. What kind of challenges could it help you overcome?
What creative boundaries could it help you push past?
It might just be the tool you need to take your photography to the next level.
Food for thought.
Yeah, something to consider.